week 9 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DSTs I looked at this week. The first one, the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins, I know this season, it's been a lost season for them, 1-7 on the season. And the defense hasn't been that great as well. But right here, week 9, they got a great matchup versus the Houston Texans that give up the second most fantasy points to defenses. So right here, they're 1 week ahead only, in my opinion. Here's the Miami Dolphins. I think they can make a few plays on David Mills or Tyrod Taylor. Whoever starts this ball game here, obviously for the Houston Texans, I think the Dolphins can make a few plays in this game. And right now, they're available in 88% of fantasy leagues. And obviously, that number is going to jump. But like I mentioned, they're only a 1 week ahead, in my opinion, here is Miami. But they're definitely a defense I would take a look at and get. The second defense in the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints, they got dropped in a lot of fantasy leagues after a tough matchup versus Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But the Saints still played a pretty good ball game, no doubt about it, in beating Brady and the Bucs in Week 8. 27 points allowed, 3 sacks though, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 to ice the ball game at the end, and a fumble recovery. So right here, they got a great matchup in Week 9 versus the Atlanta Falcons that give up the 8th most fantasy points to defenses. And right here, the Falcons, they're going to be out with Calvin Ridley now due to personal reasons for a while in a few games. So right here, I think they can make plays in this game. And now with Jameis Winston out, they need this defense to step up more than ever, is this New Orleans Saints team. And I think they could do it. They've been pretty decent this season here. And they've had double-digit fantasy points in their last 3 ball games. So right now, they got dropped in a bunch of leagues because they versed Tampa, obviously, in Week 8. And right now, they're available in 55% of fantasy leagues. And they're definitely a defense I would give an ad this week. The next defense, the New England Patriots. So the Patriots this season, it's been up and down for them being as an ad on the waiver wire. But now they got another great matchup as well coming up at Carolina in Week 9. And the Panthers give up the 4th most fantasy points to defenses. So the Patriots, they were dropped in 40% of fantasy leagues between Week 7 and Week 8 here. And they still had a good ball game at the Chargers. 24 points allowed in Week 8. 3 sacks, 2 windows, including a pick 6 by Phillips in that ball game. So right here, Carolina, we know they've been a train wreck. Sam Darnold, we don't know if he's going to play here in Week 9 after getting out of that ball game, taking a monster hit and getting concussed. And this Patriot team, they're making plays this season. They're being competitive, even obviously without Tom Brady and the rookie quarterback, Mac Jones. And I think this week here, once again in Week 9, they're going to make plays if it's either Sam Darnold or P.J. Walker and look good in this one. And they're definitely a defense I look to get on the wire this week. Next defense is the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders, they were on bye week in Week 8 here. But right here, they got a good matchup, no doubt about it, in Week 9. And they're back on the fantasy radar at the defensive end. So Week 9, they got a matchup at the New York Giants. I know they're traveling cross-country, but like I mentioned, they're resting now from the bye week. In the last 2 weeks before going on bye, they've had pretty decent performances. Week 6 at Denver, 24 points allowed, but 5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and a fumble recovery. And Week 7 versus the Philadelphia Eagles, 22 points allowed, 2 sacks, and 2 fumble recoveries. So the Giants give up the 18th most fantasy points to defenses, but I think the Raiders can make a few plays. And like I mentioned, they're riding high as well, winning 2 in a row since John Gruden stepped down and got fired, whatever the deal was at head coach after all the off-the-field issues. So this Raider team, they're looking to compete in that AFC West, and they're right in the thick of things as well, with the Chargers losing, Kansas City not looking that good this season, obviously. And Denver, I know they're 4-3, but they're fluky 4-3 in my opinion. So this Raider team, it's been about defense and offense this season. But obviously the defense has definitely improved from they were a season ago. And I think they can make a few plays at the New York Giants. And they're available in 91% of fantasy leagues if you need a defense. And the 5th and final defense I look to get on the wire this week is the Dallas Cowboys. So the Cowboys, they've been a weird defense this season where they're making teams turn the ball over a lot and they're getting pick 6s. And that starts with Trevon Diggs, obviously, in the secondary. Right now, one of the best corners in all pro football. And right here, this Cowboy team, they've had decent games, like I mentioned, but they still give up a lot of yards. They still give up a lot of points as well. But right here, they got a slam dunk matchup in Week 9 versus the Denver Broncos. And in my opinion, Teddy Bridgewater, he just hasn't looked good recently. I know they won the ball game versus the Washington football team, but they barely got through that one with Denver. So Dak will still be back home. Hopefully Dak Prescott will be back in that ball game as well, where this Cowboy defense really could tee you off and go for the big ball hawking plays if they're off to a big lead, obviously with Dak Prescott leading the offense instead of Cooper Rush. But right here, I think the Cowboys can make plays versus Denver. Dak cannot. They look decent versus Minnesota, even though it was a tough ball game for them. And right here, they're available in 43% of fantasy leagues, so that's a few defense special team units I look to add on the waiver wire heading into Week 9 of the fantasy football season.